Hello, my name is Marcelo Cajias from PATRIZIA, and within the next 10 minutes I would like to talk about the macroeconomic situation and also to give an overview about the real estate markets in the Nordics. And at the moment we see a very weak economic development across Europe, and one of the main consequences of the global financial crisis across Europe is the divergence in the fiscal position of countries. So we see on the one hand a big recovery and an increased recovery of southern countries like Spain and also from Portugal, but at the same time we see that the Nordic countries are the only countries in Europe that fulfill the Maastricht criteria of a low public deficit on the one hand, and on the other hand on a low governmental debt. And what are the main consequences of this sustainable financial condition? That means that the economic recovery of these countries, or that these countries are in the position to increase the expenditures on infrastructure, on research and education, and especially on public education. So we see in the Nordics a very good position, and on the long term, these countries are capable, or this sustainable fiscal position enables countries to generate growth on the long term. And if we look at the long term, I think the development in the long term is quite different in the Nordics in comparison to other countries in Europe. Because if we look at the forecast, at the population forecast for the coming 15 years in the Nordics, we see an increase of around about 2 million persons distributed across 4 countries. But one of the main characteristics of these countries is the huge growth rate. So we see population growth rates of more than 10% within 15 years. So that means that together with this sustainable fiscal position, these countries are in the position to generate an increased demand. And this increased demand will be directly transmitted to not only to residential investments, but at the same time to office, to retail investments. So this is, in my opinion, what emphasizes the importance of the Nordics as an investment location, as an investment market. And if we look at the real estate markets, I think the question that arises is about the liquidity of these markets. So during the last, I would say, 14 years, if we compare the transaction volumes of commercial transactions, we see that the Nordics account for almost 20% of the transactions in comparison to Germany, France, and the UK. So looking at terms, we're talking about mean investment volume of about 15 billion years in commercial properties, excluding residential properties. And at the same time, we see that 50% of the allocations of the transactions are located or correspond to Sweden. So in both aspects, I mean, the fiscal position, the profitable, sustainable fiscal position on the one hand, and on the other hand, on the long term, the positive demographic development constitute, in my opinion, a really big opportunity for international investors to invest or to allocate capitals into the Nordic markets. And excluding, I think, the years 2007 and 2006, we're talking about a mean investment volume of around about 15 billion euros. So we're talking about a really significant and liquid market in comparison to other countries in Europe. And when talking about the performance of real estate markets, I show you in this graph the cumulative total return across the 4 countries on the one hand, divided into, on the other hand, into 3 real estate asset classes: office, retail, and residential properties. And at the first view, I see 2 main characteristics of these countries. First is the stable, positive trajectory of the total returns towards growth, and the second one is the low volatility. I mean, the continuity of the total returns of the developments of the markets. Perhaps excluding now 2007 and 2006 in Denmark with residential, but I think on the long term we have a stable demand together with a really dynamic market characterized by stable total returns. And on the other hand, I see that the Nordics are, on the one hand, countries that have a very different macroeconomic circumstances, because they have 4 different currencies, But on the other hand, I think an investment strategy that goes or that decides to invest in different asset classes profits not only or benefits not only from stability, but also from a regional diversification, which is, in my opinion, one of the main reasons to invest in this country, in these countries. And at one of the last points, I think is we observe during the last 3-4 years a significant increase in the demand, in the cross-border demand for international investments. And this demand is mainly concentrated in the 4 capital cities. So we should not only, I think, concentrate on the 4 capital cities, because the Nordics are, in absolute numbers, more than 4 cities. The Nordics offer secondary cities, which are measured by the size of the markets, not really high, but they offer also investment opportunities. And this is perhaps one of the main reasons why we are trying we as PATRIZIA trying to go for these markets, because of the regional and because of the macroeconomic conditions benefiting our investment strategy.